Welcome to Gemini's tutorial series. In this tutorial, we'll be going over V-CASE, Gemini's very own music library management software for DJs. You can use V-CASE to organize your music library and prep your tracks ahead of time, from editing metadata to perfecting beat grids and adding hot cues. So when it's time to DJ, all you need to do is play. First, you'll need to install V-CASE on your computer. Follow the link in the description to download V-CASE software from GeminiSound.com. But if you're on our website, you can go to the DJ section and you'll see V-CASE here, and then you'll find download for Mac and download for PC link. So depending on your operating system, you will just click here, a download will begin. It's a zip file, you can extract it, and then you're ready to install. On a Mac, you'll open the DMG installer file and drag V-CASE into your applications folder. For Windows, just run the exe file and follow the V-CASE setup wizard. So once installed, you'll open V-CASE. On the first launch, you'll get a prompt to select your language, and then on every launch, you'll get this option to choose your device type. If you're using the MDJ series, such as MDJ 900, etc., you could just click OK. If you're using the SDJ 4000, just select this from the drop-down menu and click OK. So this is V-CASE. This top section is where most of the track preparation happens, and that's basically the player section. On the left, this is where your playlist and your file explorer and file browser and your USB devices are. And then on the right here, this is where your music library will be. In order to use V-CASE, you'll need to load some music into your library. These can be tracks purchased online, songs you've ripped from your physical collection, or even your personal DAW productions and remixes. V-CASE supports MP3, WAV, AIF, and AAC audio file formats. Importing files is super easy. You can just drag them in from wherever they are on your computer. So I've got some music here. Just grab some tracks and I can drag them right in. You can also import via the file menu here. File, import, import file, import folder, etc. Once imported, your files will remain in their original location. So it's a good idea to have a dedicated place on your computer where you can keep songs organized, such as a iTunes library on a Mac or a music folder on Windows. Please note, if you delete the files from their original location, they will no longer play in V-CASE. Though if they do get moved somewhere else on your computer, you can locate them, have V-CASE locate them for you. So once you have some music in your library, it's time to start analyzing your tracks. You just select one or more tracks and you can right click, and then you have this drop down menu, Analyze Tracks. You have options for full, detect key, or detect BPM. If you're just looking for the BPM or the key of a song, you can choose one of these, but I'd recommend just doing the full analyzation. Doesn't take too long. You'll see you get a little status bar, and then once a track is successfully analyzed, you'll see a waveform preview here. So you can now dive into track preparation. Okay, these were all analyzed, we can see. So if I select the track and I click this I button over here on the right, this will allow me to edit that track's metadata. So we see here, we can fix this up. So you got BPM and key already in there. I put dance. You can add in comments. So say, search terms you might need later for locating songs. So you could say this is up tempo, um, fire, or, chill, or whatever it might be. And then you could use those later to either sort your tracks, or, when searching for tracks, you could use the comment field. So I'll hit enter. And now all that info is here. You can also edit the tracks info directly, so you could just kind of double click on here. Also, say you know that this BPM is, say, 135, you could just key it in here and hit enter, and then that would change the track's BPM that's embedded into the file info. Other than editing song info, most of the track preparation happens up in this top player section. To load up a song for preparation, you could simply double click on it or drag it up here. So now I've got this song loaded. So I'll quickly go over all the different functions in this section and then show you how I like to prepare tracks for DJing. So on the top left, you see we have the track name and artist name, as well as the key. There'd be album art. If you had album art, it would be showing here. As far as key goes, V-CASE uses mixed-in keys Camelot system when analyzing tracks. This is a handy tool for harmonic mixing, and I highly recommend familiarizing yourself with the system. It's super easy and can take your mixes to the next level. There are plenty of tutorials online about the Camelot system that you can check out for more info about that. You'll see a wave preview of the whole song here, as well as you've got the elapsed and remaining time from the player. So yeah, so I hit play, these will change, yeah. So you've got this cue loop and grid buttons. This toggles between the different modes of track prep. In grid mode, you could use these controls basically to prepare your beat grid. And then in cue and loop, you can use this for previewing loops. In or out will allow you to manually create a loop. And then we've got these auto loops here. Half will cut the loop in half. Times 2 will times by 2. Exit will exit the loop. So just kind of show you how this works. So if I hit in, when I hit out, it will loop. And I could hit the half to half it, times by 2, make it twice as long. The exit button will leave the loop, and the reloop button would go back into it. You can use these plus and minus buttons to zoom in on the waveform. So say you need to do some precise preparation, you can really zoom into the track's transients and see what's going on. Also, I can use my mouse's wheel to zoom in and out if I'm hovering above the waveform. So the Quantize button here is activated for now. When I have it on, it will snap any actions I make, such as dropping a hot cue to the beat grid. Leaving it off will let you kind of put it anywhere. So yeah, we'll get to that in a sec when I'm going over the hot cues. So yeah, this is the hot cue bank 1 through 8. Each track has a bank, can store up to 8 hot cues, and these will be accessible from your Gemini player. On the left side, we have these transport functions. Track back, track forward, and then these are for scrubbing ahead. Right now I've got it set to fine, so if I scrub ahead, it's going to be small little increments, but I can also choose to do, 4 beats all the way up to 32 bars. So say I select 8 bars. Now I'm jumping ahead 8 bars at a time, which can be handy for, jumping to different sections of a song. Play buttons, play and pause, pretty self-explanatory. The cue button, this is much like a cue button on your DJ player. You can add a cue point and then launch from there. The play marker is represented by this white bar here in the middle. This will always be in the center, and that kind of, as the waveform goes along, it shows you where in your track you are. We also have this volume control here in the top right that you can adjust to the playback volume from the V-CASE software. And then we have this settings button. This will pull up the settings menu. The general tab allows you to hide or show different parts of the file explorer interface over here. And you could turn tooltips on and off. These are kind of helpful tips that it'll show you when you're hovering over stuff. The analysis tab allows you to define BPM ranges for the analysis engine. So say, you know that all your tracks are going to be between 70 and 180. It would only give you those figures. It's not going to tell you that a track's 220. It would make it 110 because it's in this defined range. So depending on the genres you play, if you're a drum and bass DJ, you might want to select one of these higher ones. Or if you play hip hop or something, you might want to pick one of the smaller ranges because all your tracks are usually slower tempo. The browser tab lets you choose the active iTunes directory, and you could add favorite locations. The devices tab allows you to store default settings for different device parameters. So we'd selected SDJ4000. I could go and customize all these settings of how I like it on the SDJ, and then be able to pull those up and recall those settings anytime I'm using my USB on the SDJ. And then the categories section, this is only available for the SDJ, but I've already added some. Let me take these back off. But say I, want to add year and comments, then when I go on the SDJ, I can browse tracks by year or by, say I've made a bunch of comments for all my tracks, I could, you know, scroll through them that way. So that's a handy feature. Like I said, that's only for the SDJ. If you're preparing for the MDJ, this will be grayed out. So yeah, let me show you. So yeah, you won't have that option here. Oh yeah, so if you have, say you have both, you've got an MDJ or a couple MDJ 1000s as well as an SDJ 4000. You could, if you need to switch which one you're preparing for before you export, you could just choose one or the other. Okay, so let's get to the Beatgrid preparation. So in grid mode, let's see, you have this metronome you can turn on and off, and this will allow you to hear the beat grid or hear how the beat grid aligns with your track. Okay, so that sounds pretty good. The lock button here will, if you click that, you won't be able to make any more changes when it's locked. You have an undo button, which will undo the last action. You've got this shrink beat intervals and expand beat intervals. These buttons will increase or decrease the BPM, which will in turn alter the track's beat grid. Pressing the right arrow lowers the BPM while stretching out the beat grid, and the opposite for the other one. The BPM will increase and the beat grid will shrink. Each press moves the BPM by 0.01. Holding shift and pressing either button will change the tempo by 0.5. See, so just keep that in mind. So that's without shift. This is with shift. And then these arrow keys here, these will just move the beat grid either to the left or the right. And then you've got the BPM half and double buttons. So right now we're at 130. Say you happen to know that this track is indeed only 65 BPMs, you could click that and half the BPM value. Or say it just so happens to be a super fast track and you know it's actually 260, you could double it. But we know this is 130, so we'll go back to that. This middle button here sets the beat grid marker, the anchor position. This point usually marks the first beat of the song on the beat counter and never moves due to BPM changes. Only one can be active, but basically it's good to kind of put this at the beginning of your song. Sometimes if there's an intro, I might put it right past the intro, but yeah, let's get back to the beginning here. So yeah, there it is. But say you knew that this was the first beat of the song, you could drop it here. And like I said, if you've, say you've done a lot of changes and now your beat grid's all off and, you could tell the metronome's all crazy and not lining up correctly. Let me just mess it up so we can hear it. So now you can hear the metronome's kind of drifting. So what I'm going to do, since this was analyzed pretty well before, I'm just going to analyze the track again. Since it's loaded, it's kind of giving me a warning, and I'm just saying, yeah, that's fine. It's going to analyze it again. Okay, and let's load it up. Now we're back there. So hot cues. As mentioned earlier, you can add up to 8 hot cues per track that can be accessed from your Gemini DJ player. These are handy for marking different sections of a track for easy access. So say, let's try and find another track that we might want to prepare. So okay, for example, this song has a little intro here, and I would probably want to put a hot cue right at this first beat of the song. So right there, I could either put my playhead there and drop a hot cue, and there it is, or I could do it while I'm listening to the song, and since I've got Quantize on, it's going to drop it right on that beat grid. So let's try that. So 2, 3, boom, I'm on. Now if I didn't have Quantize on, it'll let you throw them anywhere. So depending on where you want to put a hot cue, See how that one wasn't right on the grid. But if I turn Quantize on, it's going to snap it. Cool. So I'm going to delete these. Just simply press X to delete. I'll leave that first one there. As I mentioned before, these scrubbing, what I like to do is put this at 16 bars. That's pretty typical interval for song changes. So say here's where our beat begins. I'll jump ahead 16 beats, and this is likely another section change. So I'm just going to kind of quickly go through and add some hotkeys, and we'll see how that treats us. One more. Okay, so 1. So now I can jump between all these. So yeah, when I go to my SDJ now, I'll have my hotkey pads, and I can just jump around to all these different sections that I've predefined. You also might just look at this wave preview. It looks like there's a break here in the middle. I just clicked on here to jump to that spot. Let's hear what's going on with this break. Is this where it comes back in, maybe? No. Okay, so I like where that hot cue is, but maybe we want to, put one here, right where this break starts. So yeah, we could, delete that hotkey 3 and maybe put this one here, and then have 4 where that beat comes back in. Cool. As mentioned, yeah, so here these are. I could hit X, to delete any. The hotkeys are represented as red lines, as well as there's like a green caret right above. It's kind of hard to tell when they're right on the beat grid, but let me turn off Quantize, and I'll drop one off the beat grid so you can see there's a red line there showing us that this is a hotkey. I'm just kind of zooming in to show you. And say I wanted to change that and make sure this hotkey is right on that transient. I've zoomed in. You can even hear that's exactly where that spot is, so I could drop the hotkey there and then right on that sound. I'll zoom back out. Delete this because I don't want that hotkey. Okay, so for example, just by looking at this, I can tell that this beat grid needs some work. I see my beat grid marker isn't lined up with this first transient. So let's hear what's up with this track. Got a little ambient intro, and it looks like right here is where the beat's gonna come in. Yep, okay. So this is our first beat. I'm gonna zoom in, make sure I'm right at the very beginning of that. And now I'm gonna drop this anchor right there. So now this is the beginning of the bar. Now let's drop a hot cue here. This is where the beat should land, and let's see how this feels. Preview it with my metronome. Cool. Turn that off. Let's see, maybe drop another hot cue here. Now see, I didn't have Quantize on, so this hotkey didn't land exactly on the beat grid, so might want to redo that. Bring it in here, turn Quantize on, or I could just zoom in and make sure I'm actually precisely on it, but I'm just going to hit it here, and since I have Quantize on, it's going to put it right on that, so now this should be right where that beat. Zoom out. Cool. So, I would go through the track, I could look ahead. Just by looking at the waveform, I can tell there's like a little breakdown here. So let's go check that out. So this would be, looks like a 4-bar break. And then the beat's gonna come in right about here. So that might be good spots to put in hot cues. So we can have one for the break, and then one for when the break comes back in. And yeah, so now I've got my different parts of my track kind of mapped out. I could access these all later. break, and drop. Cool. So once you've got your tracks prepared and you know that they're on the grid, you've got your hotkeys set up, now it'd be time to make playlists. So it's pretty easy. You can either one at a time highlight some, but let's just say these ones we've analyzed, we want to make this a playlist. I will highlight them and then right click, and I have an option to create playlist from selection. So I'll just click this also, and then let's name it. This is music I got from YouTube for YouTube, so I'll put YouTube music. Okay, so now we have a playlist here. There's a feature called Smart Playlists that you can make custom playlists based on a set of rules that you define. It can be an incredible way to organize your music. To begin creating a smart playlist, you can go to this playlist menu and then new smart playlist. Now you can put in, whatever you want to call it, smart playlist, and you can put in some conditions. So say you only wanted tracks that were over a certain BPM or only exactly a certain BPM, so greater than 120. And then you could maybe call this one greater than 120. You could add more rules to get more specific, but then this will create a playlist for you. There it is, greater than 120. So now all these songs in here are greater than 120. So that instead of having to manually make playlists, say you have a ton of hip hop tracks and you've got them, all specified genre, you can make one and say, here's my hip hop one. Another thing worth mentioning, so we've got these 4 bars here. This is actually playlist shortcuts. So say you have like 50 different playlists, you've got a different playlist for every genre, you've got, different ones for different shows, and say there's, you're always going to your certain playlist. You could just drag your playlist to these spots here for easy access whenever you need to get to them. So that's just kind of a handy shortcut there. Also, you can make sample playlists to be used on the SDJ 4000 using the sample bank mode to load up a playlist of one-shot samples. We actually already made a tutorial on this for the SDJ series, so we'll link it below to find out more about sampling or sample playlist inside of V-CASE for the SDJ. You can just follow that tutorial. So now that we've got some tracks analyzed and we have a playlist, it'd be a good time to export those tracks to your USB so you could use them on your player. So you'll either highlight a playlist, or you could just grab, if you wanted to grab a couple tracks, you could grab those. But basically, you'll right-click on either the tracks or the playlist, and you've got this option to export playlist. Now, this is my USB stick down here. If I had a couple plugged in, it would ask me which one I want to export to, but since I only have this one USB drive, if I do export playlist, it's going to know that that's where I want to put it. So we'll click export playlist. Now it's asking me, do I want to overwrite the info for existing tracks on my USB stick? And basically, if I'd already exported some of these tracks, but in the meantime, I've fixed the Beatgrid and added hotkeys, I'm going to want to hit yes, override all that previous info, so now all the work that I've just done will appear. Cool, so I'll hit yes. It's exporting, and now it is on my USB stick and ready to be taken out of my machine and plugged into my DJ player. You can now access your V-CASE prepared music on your player. Your track info, BPM, key, etc. will be all reflected, and you'll be able to access hotkeys once a track is loaded. If you save device settings, you could load them up from the USB stick and instantly recall all your favorite settings on your player. So as you saw, preparing tracks does take some time, but it's so worth it. When it's time to DJ, you won't need to worry about knowing if your beat grid is on or not, or setting up your hotkeys. It'll all just be ready there waiting for you, and all your work has been done. All you have to do is play and enjoy. So I hope this was helpful, and thank you so much.